When you hear the name Steinmetz today, you understand that these are people, Fegi and Shlomi, that turned their heart-wrenching tragedy into a movement that spans the globe and has inspired tens of thousands of people to enhance their emunah, their bitachon, through the Ani Maman movement. There is such an overwhelming request by the French-speaking Yidden that now it's being translated into French as well. Hashem should give them the koyach to continue to inspire Klal Yisrael worldwide and should be able to do so mitoch simcha and achavas hadas. Now, let me introduce my dear friend Fegi, and you'll hear from her. Sorry, but could everyone please turn off their phones, put them on silent, because I'm sure you won't even have to look at them.
Wow. Welcome. This is just beyond my wildest dreams and expectations. In a million years, I did not think that when we booked the seminary that we would even fill up one room. And wow. Welcome, everybody. This gives my family, myself, my husband, everybody involved in the Ani Maman initiative a tremendous amount of chizuk. When I called Mrs. Katina a while back and said, Mrs. Katina, can I invite you to Montreal to come and speak on behalf of our initiative to give us chizuk? She says, sure. And I said, I'd like it to be as close to Lag BaOmer as possible. It's Lilay Nishmas, my son. She said, let me check my calendar. And she got back on the phone and she said, April 30th. Now, to most people, April 30th doesn't mean very much. But to me, April 30th is a day that Fegi Steinmetz 2.0 emerged, because according to the English calendar, that is actually the yahrzeit. That is the day that Lag BaOmer 2021 was. I couldn't breathe. A million thoughts raced through my head. Of all the days, April 30th? That's the day she's available? No. But really, I realized that was the best day for Mrs. Katina to come to Montreal, because really tonight is the night I do need probably the most amount of chizuk. And thank you, Mrs. Katina, for agreeing to come to Montreal and speak. Before I really start, I'd like to apologize to everyone. For those of you who came last year and you're here again, if I repeat myself, I only have memories. There's nothing new to add, really, because Davi's no longer here, so a lot is repeating myself because that's where I'm holding. I'm not a speaker. I'm certainly not a rebbitzin. I'm not special. I'm just the mother. I used to be known as Yuri's mother, Tzvi's mother, Davi's mother, Akiva's mother, Sasha's mother, and Sroli's mother. But now I have a new title. I'm now more commonly known as, oh, you're Davi Steinmetz's mother. And then a lot of rubbing comes along with it, a lot of petting. And oh, I didn't ask for this title, and I certainly didn't choose it. But nonetheless, it's a title that I walk around with. So, I'm embracing it. It's an obligation, and it's an achrayus that I have. And so with it, I'm choosing to spread the words that we, our family, stand by. And we are going to spread our Ani Maman initiative. And that's why we are here tonight. To have known Davi was to have loved Davi. Davi lived 21 years short. And to quote Davi's friend Dave, he didn't do things halfway. He didn't do things a quarter of the way. Whenever Davi did things, he did things 110%. He did it with his entire being, all 6'4" feet of him. He put everything into it. My son was no malach. He was no angel. He was regular. He was very, very normal. I'm not putting him on the pedestal. He was a normal child. As a matter of fact, we used to laugh. Don't bother him before he had his first coffee in the morning. And everybody who knew him, everybody knows, like, that's the truth. Just don't bother him before the first coffee because he was a little grumpy. He had two very, very distinct midos. And the first one I'm going to talk about was his Avas Yisrael. Davi genuinely loved people. He loved people of all ages, young, his age, older. It didn't matter. He just loved people. He was very, very lucky that he was Zaycha to daven in Shiel every Shabbos, 4 generations. He, his father, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather. It's a rarity these days. Most people can't say that they had that, but he had the schus to do that. And not only did he have the schus to do that, but when his great-grandfather was elderly and sickly, he sat next to him and he turned the pages of his siddur. He said the words out loud as his great-grandfather repeated them afterwards. That's who Davi Steinmetz was. Davi went to school in Mesivta, in the shul that he davened in. Davi was the biggest troublemaker that existed. If there was a prank to pull, he did it. If there was a trick to play on the teacher, he mastered it. I think from all of my children, I got the most phone calls from him. Mesivta had my number on speed dial every day, to the point where I just blocked the number. Just don't call me. You have him more than I see him. Just, unless there were blood, broken bones. They sometimes even called my sister. I just didn't answer. He was a leader and everyone's best friend. He was brilliant in his learning, yet never made his chavrusas feel any less than him. That was his gift. He had a chush and a sensitivity, and he was able to see and pick out those boys who needed to pick me up. But they always felt as if they were picking him up. It was his special gift. It was amazing. When he went to Rabbi Feigenbaum's yeshiva in Lakewood, that boy who had thick curly hair found a special brush on their bed because Davi had thick curly hair and he knew you needed that brush. That boy who was afraid to daven far the Amud because he didn't know the right niggin, somehow learned that right niggin and davened far the Amud. When it was time to go to Eretz Yisrael, Canada was a green country. He didn't need to go into bidud, quarantine, but all of his friends were coming from America, which was a red country. They all needed to go into quarantine. What was Davi going to do? Be alone in Yerushalayim, all by himself? How lonely. No, he figured it out. He went into bidud, into quarantine, in 110 degrees weather, in the desert, in a hotel with his friends. What a matzav. It was amazing. He figured out a shower schedule. He figured out a learning schedule. Best of all, he figured out you could make an order from a restaurant, have food delivered to his hotel, courtesy of his older brother Yuri, who sponsored it, for the entire floor of his hotel. Because what greater joy than having everyone on the floor enjoy a good meal? Thank you. Nothing was more exciting than sharing with your friends. Every Friday in Yerushalayim, he went up and down the streets of Malchei Yisrael and Mea She'arim to all the local candy stores and bought nash for the boys in Mea She'arim, who would line up Shabbos afternoon to his apartment. They would stand by his merpeset, near his merpeset, where he would throw down candies. Davi was the biggest nasher. If you would go to his room, you would find thousands and thousands of candy wrappers, taffy wrappers. Cleaning his room for Pesach was a disaster because Davi was a nasher. So why not share the wealth? And that's what he did. All the kids would line up and get candies. When my 10-year-old son wanted to do something to perpetuate Davi's memory, we tried to find something on his level. We thought and thought and thought until we came up with this idea that every Thursday we would go to the foodery and buy some nash. We would put a sticker on with Davi's picture that would say a bracha for Davi. Le'iloi nishmas Yisachar Dov Beverishman Shleima. We would then give it to our Rebbitzin Unstuffer, and she would distribute it to different families in our community. And this is what my son Sroli does every Thursday, so that he can follow in his brother's footsteps. Davi went back to Eretz Yisrael, and it was right after Sukkot. His friend had lost his father during COVID. He just got to Eretz Yisrael, and one Shabbos was telling Davi he had never gone to Har Hazeisim to say Kaddish by his father's kever. And Davi was horrified. How could you not have said Kaddish by your father's kever? And the boy answered, I don't know how to make arrangements. I don't know how to arrange a minyan. I don't know how to arrange a car. How do you get a guard? This bothered Davi tremendously. Shabbos ended, the boy went back to his dira, made Havdalah, and about a half hour after the Zman got a phone call. It was Davi. Go downstairs, wait by the corner, hat, jacket, and sitter. There's a minyan, we're going to Har Hazeisim. This to him was the most important thing, to give his friends Menuchas HaNefesh. And his final act, which truly demonstrates his Avas Yisrael, which is probably the hardest for us as parents to have heard. And it took us a long time to be able to repeat the story. We did a lot of research, and we got the video just recently. When the tragedy of Meron happened, we asked our cousin, who was living in Eretz Yisrael at the time, Rabbi Moshe Gershon Steinmetz, to go as an emissary on behalf of our family to all the families sitting Shiva in Eretz Yisrael and be Menachem Avala. He went to many of the families and finally ended up with the Chayut family. They lived on the outskirts of Bnei Brak. When he knocked on the door, a little boy of about 9 or 10 years old answered. And he asked my cousin, what is your name? He said, Steinmetz, or Steinmetz. The little boy said, Steinmetz me Canada? And he answered, yes. He quickly took my cousin's hand and dragged him into the room where his mother was sitting Shiva for their child. And he started yelling, Ima, Ima, ze Steinmetz me Canada. Mrs. Chayut was overcome with emotion. She started to cry, and my cousin realized something very strange was going on. So he had somebody record the following story. The story was told over through Mr. Chayut and this 9 and 10-year-old child. Mr. Chayut had gone to Meron with his 2 children. When the Stampede trampling tragedy occurred, Mr. Chayut had gotten separated from his 2 children and was injured, and he fell to the ground and could not get up because his feet were injured. And he watched helplessly while his children were stuck just a few feet away from him. Davi and his friend Yossi Cohn were probably about 6 or 7 feet away from him. The 2 Chayot boys were right in front of Davi and Yossi. Davi and Yossi had nowhere to go, not forward and not backwards. They realized there was nowhere to go. They looked at each other, they looked down at the boys, and now is when the boy, the 9-10-year-old boy, recounts his parts. Davi and Yossi picked up their arms, formed some kind of a butterfly arch, and looked down at the boys and yelled at them, breathe, breathe, breathe. The next thing the boy recalls is waking up. Mr. Chayut says he watched as everyone just trampled and fell one on top of the other. When the boy woke up the next morning, he realized his brother had been nifter. The only thing he remembers is Davi Steinmetz's face. He woke up, saw a picture of the 45 Kedoshim with each person's name and country where they had been from. He saw Davi Steinmetz's name, and underneath it said, Davi Steinmetz, Canada. And when my cousin came in and said his name was Moshe Gershon Steinmetz, he right away associated Steinmetz in Canada. And that's how we know this story. Because Mrs. Chayut told it to my cousin, and they sent us the recording. This was Davi's final act. He truly was an Ohev Yisrael. He couldn't save himself, but he saved the Chayut boy. Davi's second midah that I want to really talk about was his emunah. Davi truly believed with every fiber of his being in a higher power. He lived it. He breathed it. It was part of his DNA. It was something that not all of us have. I can't say that I have it, but it's something that some of my children really have. It's exceptional. He woke up in the morning, it was who he was. It was exceptional. When he came home from Pesach, he was sitting around the table and he was telling my husband, Tati, I think you should give more tzedakah. I think, Baruch Hashem, you're capable of it. Hashem gave you money. You should give it all away. You have it. Give it. It's not yours. Hashem nasan, Hashem lakach. And we're like, excuse me? That's not how we talk. Those are not words of a 21-year-old bacher. It's not. It was almost as if he had a premonition. Those words are not words that you normally use. But no, he says, no, you have to give berachvis, b'shefa. It's not ours. It's all from Hashem. Because really, that's how he lived. That's how he thought. That's how he executed everything he did. That was who he was. We heard the story about 20 times during Shiva from 20 different friends of his. He was in Eretz Yisrael, Davi, and he's walking down the streets of in Malchi Yisrael, right by where Malchi Yisrael and Mei Sharm start. And this Yerushalmi man waves to Davi, and Davi waves back. He was with a group of friends. And his friend said, Davi, who is that? Davi says, I have no idea. What do you mean you have no idea? No idea. Why is he waving to you? Oh, he has my credit card. Well, why does he have your credit card? Well, we were in the Makolet and he didn't have money and he needed my credit card and he needed it more than I did. Are you out of your mind? You gave some random person your credit card? Well, the Eibishter knows that, if he needs it, he'll use it, and Taka every 2 weeks he used his credit card. And somehow every 2 weeks the credit card bill got paid and it was fine. Davi had no issues, no problem. I had issues. But Davi had no issues, and Davi took care of paying it. Because he believed that if somebody needs something, it should get taken care of, and the Eibishter will take care of making sure it gets done. He had a motorized bike. You lock your bike in Eretz Yisrael. Davi never locked his bike. Why do you need to lock your bike? You need your bike to get to yeshiva. It's going to be there waiting for you, right? The Eibishter knows you need to get to yeshiva. The bike's going to be there. He never locked his bike. His bike was there every single morning waiting for him. When he was nifter, His brother Tzvi Yarshin the bike, inherited the bike. Tzvi lived in Machal, and Tzvi locked that bike every single night because Tzvi knew better. Except one morning, Tzvi came downstairs and the lock was broken and there was no bike. And Tzvi was very upset. So Tzvi took a picture and he put it on our group chat and he wrote, "No more bike." And his brothers nicely answered, "Where's your faith, bro?" There was no bike. That was it. He constantly gave out tzedakahs. He was the yeshiva bacher. We have no idea how his credit card bills got paid. 99% of the time, he paid his own bills. 1% of the time, he asked us for money. We paid it. Not so happily, because you're responsible, but really, I would say 99% of the time, he covered his own bills. If anyone remembers, Lag BaOmer 2021, there was a Hatzalathon that night. And I was watching the Hatzalathon. It was very exciting. All the big singers were on stage singing. And at the bottom of the screen, they were writing, who made donations. Literally moments before the Meron tragedy occurred, Robert Steinmetz, $72 in honor of his friend Yossi Carmel, because his friend Yossi Carmel was a Hatzalah member. I don't know how he had time while he was busy in Meron to give $72 in honor of his friend Yossi Carmel, but no, you have to give tzedakahs. I said this last year, but when we were in Eretz Yisrael, we went to an Adam Gadol to find clarity, to ask for clarity. We know there's no crystal balls, because if there would be, we would all have won the lottery by now. There are no crystal balls, but we were searching. We said, explain, how could something like this happen? We don't understand. Please, something, give us a lifeline. We need something. We need to understand. And he told us, the only reason this was able to happen was because Davi was ready. Because Davi truly believed, his neshama truly believed, his tafkid was done. He was ready to accept Ol Malchus Shemayim. He believed with every fiber that he was ready. We have on video, which is the strangest thing because there were 100,000 people there. You see the Total Sovereign Rebbe saying, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And you see tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people repeating those words. And we have the video, and you see Davi in the crowd. He's 6'4", you kind of can't miss him. But we see him mouthing those words, Shema Yisrael, and those were literally the last words that he said before he was nifter. He was Mekabel Ol Malchus Shemayim. He was 21 years old, but a neshama that lived a lifetime. This was just a small glimpse into Davi's life. During Shiva, my family sang songs of Ani Maman. It was natural for them because it's part of my family's way of life. You ask, how did the Ani Maman initiative start? My family got up from Shiva Friday afternoon. That Shabbos, the men went to shul. We davened in Mesivta Reishis Chachma, where Rav Unstuffer is the Rav. The shul was broken. We're a family. It's not a regular shul. Every member there is a brother, a father, an uncle. We're all connected. That Shabbos, well, every Shabbos, the Rav speaks before Musaf. The Rav had printed out 100 Ani Maman cards, and he asked the members to please say Ani Maman. It takes 90 seconds. For those that say it, to please continue saying it. For those that didn't say, please say it. My husband happens to have been saying it for years already. But it really appealed to everyone because it was something that was so easy. And being that everyone was so broken, it was the perfect solution. That Matzei Shabbos, my husband decided to see if maybe he can get 1,000 people to say it that week, and maybe 10,000 by the next week. He started calling people. The response was amazing. Within the first week, there were 10,000 people who were saying Ani Maman. So my husband started printing cards, 3,000 at a time. Then the camps started asking for them. It snowballed. The response was incredible. To date, over 200,000 cards are in every continent and in every country. We get pictures on a daily basis from the most far-out places, from the most random places. It's unbelievable. And then the Gabaim approached Rabbi Chesky Elias to please come to Mesivta and give shiurim twice a week. And he agreed. And then a website went up. And then a website that had Rabbi Elias's shiurim, plus more people's shiurim. And then a logo went up. And then Rabbi Elias wrote a book that came out last Lag BaOmer. My husband went to speak to Art Scroll and asked them, what's considered a successful book? And they answered, 2,000 to 3,000 copies. If we sell that, we'll be very happy. Husband said 2,000 to 3,000 copies? No, that didn't sit well. Well, to date, over 10,000 copies have been sold. That was just in the first year. And Hashem, hopefully, by this Lag BaOmer, the French edition, and then hopefully we're going into print for a Yiddish edition. What keeps us going? For most of you who know me, let's call you my inner circle. Fridays are a day that nothing happens in my house. I sit on my couch because I suffer from PTSD, because Friday was when Lag BaOmer happened. I don't do anything. I don't bake. I don't cook. Nothing. Nothing works. One Friday, my phone dinged, and I glanced down at my phone, and there was an email from some random person who I'd never heard of. And I opened it, and this was the letter. Dear Mrs. Steinmetz, you don't know me, and though I feel connected to you through the Sefer Ani Maman, I don't really know you either. We both have sons who learned in Rabbi Feigenbaum's yeshiva. My son was a shiur or two behind your precious son Davi Zatzal, yet considered him a beloved friend. In fact, he was still learning there when the terrible tragedy occurred, the tragedy that so deeply affected us all. I watched a video clip of my son and his friends sitting on the floor in yeshiva, surrounded by candles, singing and crying, trying to process the enormity of their loss, of our loss, of Klal Yisrael's loss. We tried valiantly to believe, though we couldn't possibly understand. I watched clips of the Shiva, your husband and sons sitting erect like soldiers, ready to accept the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I watched them sing Ani Maman with the boys who came to be Menachem Avel. Davi's family strengthening and comforting his friends. How they strengthened all of us, mothers and fathers you don't even know. Ironically, drawing on the incredible reserves of strength and emunah from the mourners themselves. When I saw the Sefer Ani Maman in the stores, I knew it was something I wanted to learn and to incorporate into my life in a meaningful way. My friends and I decided to set aside 15 to 20 minutes every Sunday morning for a phone conference. This week, we concluded the magnificent Sefer, but in no way are we finished with it. The words and lessons resonated deeply within each one of us as we strive to live a life of purpose, of avodas Hashem. As the Sefer so beautifully concludes, have we lived and acted in a way that reflects our belief? May our learning and any growth we accomplish as a result be a schus for an aliyas neshama of Davi Zatzal, and may we merit to sing joyous songs together with the coming of Mashiach b'mehera v'yameinu. Good Shabbos. And it's signed by 15 women. This is why we continue. Why do we say Ani Maman? Doesn't matter who you are, where you're coming from, where you are holding in your emunah. Like we like to say, faith it till you make it. Do it for Davi, do it for yourself, and it will transform your day and your life 190 seconds at a time. It is with great pleasure and it is a great honor for me to welcome to Montreal tonight a woman who, when I was probably at my lowest point, when it was very, very dark, when there was no color in my life, I sat at a Shabbaton for bereaved parents, which Ma'oros Shabbos so nicely invited me to. I sat in an audience with 200 women. I cried, and then I laughed. And Mrs. Katina brought color back into my world. She gave me chizuk, and I said, Montreal, we need to have her here. So I'd like to welcome Mrs. Katina.
Wow, for me, this trip was worth every second. Just to sit here and listen to what Mrs. Steinmetz shared with us tonight. A short time ago, I gave a speech to a seminary, and I told them what it means to live a life of a minna, and living a life of a minna, and doing everything with a minna, and so on and so forth. And after 45 minutes of talking to these girls, and they all looked at me, I couldn't wait to hear more. And then I finally wrapped it up, and I asked them if they have any questions. And one girl raised her hand and asked me, what is a minna? My jaw dropped, my mouth was open. I was like, what? I just spoke 45 minutes of a minna, and then the principal got up and said, it's a muna. And I heard them all go, ah. So if you hear a word that you don't understand, just change the Havara a little bit, and it'll feel like Piram and a minna, and I'm still Hasidish, and I look at, it's funny that I addressed an audience once in Lakewood, a very not Hasidish audience, and on the invitation it said that Mrs. Brenda Katina, guest speaker, and I surely don't look like a Brenda Katina. And I walk in, and they all looked at me like, whoa. And I said, I'm so sorry you didn't expect such a Yanchi lady. And the lady in the front asked me, could you tell me what Yanchi means? Is that a combination of yummy and crunchy? I said, well, yeah. But before I continue, I want to thank the designer of this podium very much, because this thing is right on top of my double chin. But you know what? Living a life of Amuna, just a short time ago, very short time ago, I said, I'm never speaking again. Because here I go around speaking of living a life with Hashem and remembering who's in charge and accepting everything ba'ahava. And I have these beautiful stories to represent that. And then this happens. My son went in for an outpatient procedure, very simple, ordinary sinus surgery. He was kept in the hospital for observation, and he went into cardiac arrest. 18-year-old son with Down syndrome. So here he's in cardiac arrest, and it's Thursday, and I had somebody go take over for Shabbos because I have 5 other children, beautiful children that needed me, and I decided to go home for Shabbos. But Amaspik, an organization that serves the special needs population, came into the picture and said, you know what? You need to get to your koiches. Let me take the children. And they took 4 of my 6 children for Shabbos. One was in the hospital. I was left home with a 25-year-old son. And I was trying to get to myself. And I said I was going to sleep all Shabbos because I needed all the koiches in the world. My son was in a coma. I needed to have that koiches back. And I dedicated my Shabbos to mamash, sleeping and eating and davening, and that's it. And focusing on, recharging all my batteries. And I wake up at 6 a.m. just for a second to look at the time, and I'm like, wow, I have nobody in the house. I have nothing to do. I could go back to sleep. And I said, you know what? Wait a minute. What's happening in the next week? So I have the kids coming home. We have to make plans. It's almost Pesach. We have to start cooking for Pesach. What's going to be? How long is he going to be in the hospital? And then I remembered something that so wasn't part of the picture. I said, wait a minute. Do I have all the dresses for all the kids for Pesach? And I'm like, I just had a simcha. Yiddish, my friend who was here from Tush, she made a simcha, married off her youngest daughter, and I took all their new dresses for the Sheva Brachas. And of course, I took more than I needed because, if I don't like this dress exactly, the kids had to be picture perfect. Where's that garment bag? I don't remember bringing it home from the hotel. And where could that garment bag be? And then I give myself a nice big beating up why I relied on my husband to take that garment back to the car. Like, do it yourself. They're not reliable. And where's that garment bag? And I haven't seen their dresses. It was all their Pesach and Shvias dresses. Starched white eyelet stunning dresses, and then a two-piece, gorgeous things. Their entire wardrobe for Yantiv. I never saw that garment bag come into the house. But I'm drifting between being awake and sleep, but I'm driving myself into craziness that you can't imagine. And I said, wait a minute, Hashem is testing me. Could we stayed in the hotel? And I remember my friend said that there is a Shabbos Havai, the lost and found. And we could call the lost and found, but you know what, Hashem, I'm never talking again because I'm not accepting this Ba'ava. I am not ready to accept this Ba'ava. These are the whole entire wardrobe. I'm not ready. And I'm like, okay, yes, I am ready. Hashem, I always talk about it. I talk about it to everyone. You know what? I'm not speaking again. I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm not accepting it. I need my garment back. Don't test me on this. And I'm like, okay, you know what? These dresses are gone. If it's in the lost and found, yes or no, I don't know. We can replace these dresses. Junie and all these fancy stores will sell more dresses to me gladly. Hashem, I'm accepting it, Bahava. But am I really? I said, I go around talking about living with Amuna all over the world, and all of a sudden, a few silly dresses, and I am in such a panic, and I'm sweating, and I can't fall asleep, and I'm debating if I am talking again, or I'm not talking again. Am I talking about Amuna, living with Hashem, accepting Nisyonis Bahava? And I said, you know what? Hashem, you are testing me. I am accepting it Bahava. And Hashem, to prove to you that I accepted it Bahava, you will see I will fall asleep in the next 5 minutes. And I did. And that was a real proof to Hashem that I accepted the Nesoya. And I wake up, and I'm getting ready to make the Sida, Lekovat Shabbos Kodesh. And I need to go get clothing for my son, who's 25 years old, but he's dependent because he's low-functioning Down syndrome. And I open up the closet, and there are all the dresses. I felt like such a fool. I said, Hashem, you tricked me, you tried me. I thought I passed. The dresses are here. Thank you. That's a ball. Such a cute story. And then Sunday comes, and my kids come home from their Shabbaton. And I watch the driver from our camera that has a big screen in the kitchen put the 5 suitcases on my front porch. And my kids go off to respite, their Sunday program, and their 5 suitcases are on my porch, and everything is fine, and we go into the Pesach kitchen, and we cook compote and chicken soup, and we get ready for Pesach. And Yiddish is ready to leave. And I walk around the door. Where are the 5 suitcases? Where are they? Hashem, where are they? Am I accepting it? No. You tried me on Shabbos morning. There are 5 suitcases, please Hashem, all their dirty laundry, all their equipment, all their supplies, all their dresses, all their Shabbos shoes, their new pajamas. I need my 5 suitcases. And I check the cameras, and we're able to rewind it. And we rewind it. And we watch this person who goes to pick up used clothing, they're called Pick Purple, come onto my porch and take my 5 suitcases. I say, Hashem, I'm not accepting it. No, I don't. No, I know. Yes, I am. No, but I'm not. I need my suitcases back. But you know what? Amunah, Hashem is in charge. Hashem, you're telling me something. But you know what? Let me make some shtadlis. Let me try to find these suitcases. And I call every number in the book that may know Pick Purple, and they're in Lakewood, and I'm in Monroe. And we find the driver. And he brought those suitcases back. Thursday, my child was in cardiac arrest in a coma. Friday night, I thought I lost all their clothing. And Sunday, I thought again. And then on Monday, I called Tuftam to make my order for Pesach. And part of my order was 3 containers of grain, horseradish. And I walk into the door, and they sent me 3 containers of grain for a caterer on a Friday. Who needs 30 gallons of horseradish? Not this woman. And my mother said, don't panic. Just open the container and put it into containers and give it out to Klal Yisrael. I said, Mommy, I'm not opening red-colored anything in my house on Erev Pesach when I'm cleaning my house. And then Pesach comes and goes. My son is in a coma for 10 days. He wakes up, and he comes home on Chol Hamoed Pesach. And Pesach is over, and we bake challah. And we're so happy, we're celebrating. We're so happy the child is home. He asked us to make a Seder. 2nd days, we made a Seder. My husband put on a kittel. We started from scratch. When everybody was all done, we started from scratch because he requested it. And I bake challah for Shabbos. I come home from shul, and where are my challahs? No, people, where are my challahs? No, don't tell me. My garment bag I found. The 5 suitcases were brought back. Where are my challahs? Where are my challahs? My schlissel challahs. I put my whole schlissel in it. I'm banking on the ashiras. Where are my challahs? We check the freezers. Like maybe they're going to put it in the freezer. Where are my challahs? I checked every freezer. I checked the oven. I checked the oven again. And then I said, Omar Rabbi Yomen. And then I checked the freezers again and the ovens again, and I checked my garbage can. Maybe my kids decided to trash those challahs. I went outside in the dumpster to look for my challahs, and they were not there, and we ate matzah. Where are my challahs? Ladies, I need my challahs. And then I remembered where my challahs were. Because my friend had a blackout. And she asked me if she could bake her challahs at my house. And she baked her challahs at my house. And she sent her husband. I'm not saying a word about husband again. She sent her husband to pick up those challahs, and he took all the challahs. And I didn't know until Matzah Shabbos. And I said, did you maybe eat my challahs? She said, yeah, we love them. I couldn't believe your generosity. You gave me so much. This is the story of my challahs. But you know what? Talking about a life of Amunah. This is tragic comedy. This is all a lot of fun. But you know what? I'll tell you. I was there. I was there on the 14th floor, dying alone in a room. My husband and I are married for 34 years. We have no children. I remember that day on the 14th floor in the Hemsley Tower in Manhattan, in New York City. The Hemsley Tower is a hotel-like building that's connected to the hospital for those people who need to be right near the hospital without being inpatient. And this couple needed to be there. We did what we needed to do when we were hoping for the best. We were so hopeful that Hashem is going to give us children. And it was that fateful Sunday when we were finally going to do that last pa'ila, that medical pa'ila to have a child or children. And I was so looking forward. And every time somebody asked me, how many do you want to have? I always said 4, 2 girls, 2 boys, nice balance. And I was looking forward to that day. It was the one day, that one chance that this couple had. And I was on the 14th floor of that building. And the call came in and the doctor was on the phone and said, Mrs. Katina, unfortunately, after sitting in the lab all day, I must tell you that nothing can be done. I call that day my own little Auschwitz. I lost all my children. My 2 sons, my 2 daughters, they were gone. My whole life fell apart in front of me. And I was dying. I remember that I needed to cry alone. I just told my husband like this. No words came out of my mouth. And I took the elevator down. I took the elevator down to the lobby. I do not remember exactly what happened, but I do remember very clearly somebody tapping me on my shoulder. And I picked up my eyes to look at who's tapping me on my shoulder, and there was a police officer with a box of tissues. I must have made quite a scene. I cried. I cried bitter tears. And then I called my mother to tell her the news. She was waiting there like all mothers do for the good news. And I said, Mommy, the doctor just called that nothing can be done. It's over for us. And my mother said, my dear child, there are no right words to say right now. There's nothing I can tell you, but I can cry with you. And that's what we did. But then my father took a car and he came to that hotel room. And he said, my dear child, there's only one thing I want to tell you today. So many tzaddikim envy you. So many people would change places with you right now. Because who in the world can say Shema like you are going to say tonight? And I looked at him and he said, who can say Ve'ohavta eis Hashem alekechu b'chol levavchu, b'chol nafshechu, b'chol moedechu. We paid $35,000 for that one piece of hope. And then it was all gone. I said, tonight you will be able to say Shema. Every tzaddik will be umakana. And he left. And you know what? I said Shema with my whole heart, with my whole neshama, with my whole gift. But when I was done saying Shema, I said, Hashem, I would like to ask you for one favor. Please do not give me back my neshama tomorrow morning. I have nothing left to do. I have nothing to live for. I have nowhere to go. I don't want to go back home to that empty house where the silence is deafening. And I went to sleep. And the next morning, the most devastating thing happened. I woke up. I looked around. I looked at that person next to me. And I was hoping that his wish was granted. But no, there he was underneath that brown cover that was rising. I said, so we're in this together. I paced the room up and down, and up and down, and up and down. I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know where to go. But then I walked over to the window, and I pulled the sheets open, and I saw something very, very amazing. I looked down 14 flights, and I saw hundreds of people passing my room. I saw hundreds of cars passing by. Nobody was looking up. Not one single car was honking. Like, hey, we know, we feel you. Nobody. And that's when I made a cheshbon. I can die in this hotel room alone. We can die in this hotel room together. I know for sure that every Jewish newspaper will write about it. Kol Mavasser will talk about it. And once a year in the corner of the Jewish press, there will be a little square to please learn Mishnayos. This couple didn't leave any children. But then I looked down and I saw that life goes on. And the fact that Hashem gave me back my neshama the next day means that I still have a purpose. And I woke up my husband and he came to the window and I asked him, what do you see? And he looked at me, I'm talking about husbands again. What do you want me to see? I said, I just want you to see that life goes on. Life goes on, and it's our choice. Do we want to die in this room alone, or do we want to join them? And he asked me, what do you want to do? I said, I want to join them. Let's pack our bags and go home. And make a Kiddush Hashem. And do the best we can, because obviously Hashem believes in us. And there must be a purpose. And we packed our bags and we went home. And I took my Nesoyan and I went on to build myself a beautiful family. I adopted 6 beautiful children with Down syndrome. All from the hospital, straight from birth. And I am Zoiche to be their mother. And these neshamas, these beautiful children, are the ones that are my rebbes, my role models, my teachers and my guide. They teach me how to live every single morning when I open my bedroom door and they hear that jiggle of that handle. They don't miss it. They don't miss that jiggle. They hear me coming out of my room and they run towards me yelling, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. And they're so super excited to see me. Everybody wants to grab a piece of me. I'm big enough for everyone. Big enough. They all get to hold on a little piece of me. And they're looking at me with such a joy, such a simcha. They're so excited to see. Who do they see? Did you ever see me in the morning? You don't want to see my nightgown and my turban. But to them, I am the most beautiful person in the world, because I am the woman who will take care of their every single need, whether or not they ask for it. You know what I learned from this? Amuna. Amuna. They are happy to see this woman who's going to take care of them. We open our eyes in the morning, we say, Moide Ani, Hashem is here. He's going to take care of our every single need, whether or not we ask for it. Every step of the way. I learned from Shulam, the one that was in cardiac arrest. He's an 18-year-old child with young man with Down syndrome and autism. Very unusual for a child like him to have perfect clarity of speech like everyone else in this room. I struggle in speech with so many of my other children. One of them is completely nonverbal, and some of them are hard to understand. And here I have this child with perfect clarity of speech. Every morning when I walked into the child's room, he gave me a whole list of things that he wants. He's the kid that's autistic. He'll stare at the light bulb and twist his arms like this instead of looking at me. He's not one of those kids that will necessarily yell, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. He runs towards me, grabs me. For one split second, he knows I'm here, and he moves on to doing this, staring at the light bulb. But he did something very cute. He said, I want to come out of bed. I want to eat jellies. I want to eat French toast. I want to eat pizza. I want to listen to music. I want to watch a video. I want to play with Legos. I want to play with toys. And he went on and on and on and on, rambled off this whole list that he wants, and went back, smiling, staring at the light bulb and doing this. I loved hearing it. I stand there and I take in every single word. And every day is very similar or very much the same. I want to come out of bed. I want to eat jellies. I want to eat French toast. I want to eat pizza. But you know what? I want to rush him because I want to hear this. I am a mother who appreciates clarity of speech. And I stand there and I take it all in. Love to hear every word that comes out of the child's mouth. But you know what happens? I want to come out of bed. I want to eat jellies. Who in this room thinks that at 7 a.m. Shulam Katina is going to get a jelly? Nobody. There's always that one woman in the audience that says, "Geba my jelly." It's usually my grandmother. You know what? But you know what? I take this wish list and I organize it for him. I put it into order. I know the kid likes jellies, the kid loves pizza, the kid likes French toast. I will organize this wish list for him. I call it his wish list. He wants jellies. I will use jellies as a reward when this child deserves a reward. He wants pizza. I will make sure that somewhere in my menu there is pizza. And this is how I take his wish list and I organize it for him. What did I learn from Shula? Tefillah. Tefillah, give Hashem your wish list. It doesn't have to make sense. Hashem stands there and waits for every word that comes out of your mouth. He loves it. He hears it. But let's never forget that Hashem is the one to organize it. Put it into order. He knows what's good for us. He knows what we want, what we need, and so on and so forth. My brother has a pool. And one day, he watched a very interesting scene unfold. He put in 2 doorknobs, a lower one and a higher one. You need to use both to turn both doorknobs to get into the pool. That is for safety reasons. And he watches a little boy go over to the pool and turn that handle and turn it and turn it and turn it. And of course, the door did not open. And then all of a sudden, this little boy's father came, who was a few minutes behind him, and just walked to the door. The little boy did not even see his father yet. He was busy trying to yank that door open, and his father just went to the top and did this, whoops, and the door opened. And today's day, this little boy believes he opened the door. But you know what? That is Amunah. Up until they don't help you from up there in Shemayim, this door will never open. We need them to help us open the door up in Shemayim. Something about Ani Maman. When she told me that they dedicated Ili Nishmas for Davi, Ani Maman, I was like, hey, that's my life. That's a story of everything I live with. Ani Maman, it keeps me going through the hardest of times. And I'll tell you how it all started. Little Yittel was born. Beautiful little baby girl, all of 2 pounds, that the doctors gave her 24 hours to live. And she was left in the hospital to die. The grandfather called me and asked me if I want to be the person to look after the child until she passes on. And I was very excited to that phone call. And it is very unusual. Why was I so excited to that phone call? Like who would want to be that person to go to the hospital and be there with his child and who knows what's going to be? Why was I so excited? Because my father told me once during a very difficult time, he said in Zohar HaKudosh, it says when Hashem loves someone, he sends you a matuna. And I said, Tati, really? Tell me what it says in Zohar HaKudosh. It says in Zohar HaKudosh, it says, when Hashem loves someone, he sends him a matuna. What is the matuna? What is the gift? A nitzrach, a needy person. And here this person dials my number. And at that moment, I remembered my father's words and was like, hey, my father just told me that this is the love language from Hashem. He loves me. He just sent me a very direct message that you, my dear child, are zoicha to this mitzvah. I took a taxi. I went to the hospital. I stood there by that isolette, that incubator in the NICU with that 2-pounder, little baby girl that looked like a bird without feathers. What am I to do here? She doesn't know me. I don't know her. I'm a total stranger. What is it about this baby? How long will she live? And I started talking to her neshama. And I stood there by that isolette and said, little girl, you don't know me. I don't know you. But the fact that I was chosen to be here by your isolette while you're still here must have a cheshbon shemayim. And then I had this amazing idea. And I said, little girl, you're soon going home to your father. You're going home to the Kisai HaKuvit. I have a message to send to Shemayim. I want you to go up there and tell Hashem how much Klal Yisrael is suffering. Tell him we are done. We can't anymore. And I got so animated. And I started crying by that crib. And I said, tell him, this galus is so hard. Tell him to send us Mashiach. And then I wanted to finish and wrap it up. Said, you know what? I'll do what people do before they pass away. I'll say Shema. And I covered my eyes and I said, Shema Yisrael, Shem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And the nurse was watching me from the corner of her eye. She walks over to me and she said, lady, do you want to touch the baby? I said, of course I want to touch the baby. I just connected to her neshama. I connected to her in a spiritual way. You are now giving me an opportunity to connect to the baby in a physical way. Sure, I want to touch the baby. And she opens up the isolate door. And I look at my hand that's bigger than the child. And I'm trying to make a cheshbon where and how to touch her. And I decided I'll take one finger and put it into her little hantala. And her fingers closed around mine. And I said, little girl, now that I feel you, I feel your warm body against mine, I know that there is a heart still beating in your chest. I want to tell you a little secret. And I sang this child her first song. Ani Maman beyaminu shelaimu. That is the first song this child heard. And I sang Ani Maman. And I said goodbye to the child. And the next morning I called the NICU to check if the baby is still alive. And they said, yes, she's still here. And I went back and I sang Ani Maman to her. And I went back and I sang Ani Maman to her again and again and again. Every single day for 8 weeks. And on the 8th week, the doctor asked me, do you want to take the baby home? And Yitl had her bas mitzvah this year. Beautiful little girl. As a treat, Yitl will be coming in to say hello to you. Mrs. Steinmetz, how much time do you still allow me to speak? I will finish off with a few very beautiful lessons that I learned from my children. But before I talk about them, I want to tell you one lesson I learned in life. I went to make a lunch for mothers who have medically fragile children in a beautiful house on top of a mountain. And I prepared the most beautiful lunch to these women that are going through such hard times. Every single day is a struggle. Like this one woman said, she arrived to that luncheon and she said, I had such a hard morning. She was crying with bitter tears and asked her, why? What is so hard? Tell us. Maybe we can help you. She said, I looked all over for my daughter's eye. She has a prosthetic eye. She couldn't go to school. And I said, look at this lesson. Hashem Yirachem. We wake up, frishing gesund. How do we thank Hashem? But I made this luncheon in the house on top of the mountain, and the bus arrived, and my lunch was ready. And I was waiting for the women to come in, and nobody came in. And I waited 5 minutes, and 6 minutes, and 8 minutes, and they were still not there. So I decided to see what happened. Where are they? And I step outside, and all the women are there, with their back to the house, looking at the view below. It was a magnificent, magical view. It was full. The colors, every shade of red and orange and yellow and brown and green. It was a stunning sight to behold. And they were standing there and watching it and taking it all in. And nobody was interested in the lunch that I prepared inside. And they were oohing and eyeing and taking it. And that's when I thought of something very beautiful. You know what? On their way up, they did not notice all this beauty. They were too busy schmoozing. They were talking to each other. They were busy with their challenges and struggles. They were drowning in their pity and self-pity and pity for their friends. And they were so involved in what's happening with them that it didn't even take 1 minute to look at the beautiful view on their way up. It was only when they got to the top of the mountain that they noticed how beautiful their way up was. You know what? When we're on top of the mountain, it's over and done with. It's the end. There's beauty all the way to the top of the mountain. My children are here. Not Chomi, so 2 of my children are here. Oh, wow. So she's coming lessons that Chumi taught me, which I want to share with you. The one is that we went for a camp interview with Chashi Krupka, Camp Sternberg, the Kesher division. And Chashi is a beautiful lady that runs the camp, but when I walked in with my daughter and she saw the matzav, she says, Mrs. Katina, I'm sure you have a lot to offer, but this interview is not about you. You do not need to impress me. That one needs to. So that one heard this whole cheshbon, and she says, you know, I take care of myself. I eat healthy. I eat my vegetables, and my eyes were rolling in my socket. And I asked her which vegetables. She says, tomato dip. And then she went on to tell Mrs. Krupka, I love sports. I have a private coach, and he taught me to focus on the ball. And this is a very beautiful lesson I learned is, if we're not going to take care of ourselves and focus on the ball, we will not make it. We will not make it. And I'll finish off with a beautiful lesson I learned from Chomi. Wait a minute, I want Yitl to tell you what is the first song I ever sang to her. Come here, come here. What is the first song I ever sang to you?
Ani Maman.
Proud, proud. Take your hands off.
Ani Maman.
Nana, say it clearly.
Ani Maman.
Ani Maman. And it's still her favorite song, right? It's still your favorite song? So I want to finish off with a beautiful lesson from Chomi that you will always remember. Now, Chomi loves her spinner. Do you have your spinner here?
No.
Slati, do you have your spinner here? It's in their coat pocket somewhere. You know the fidget spinners? That you put between your fingers and you spin and you spin and you spin. Now, fidget spinners are still a thing in my house. And when I asked Chomi what she wants for Afikoima, that's not Tznius. When I asked her what you want for Afikoima, she said, I want spinners. I said, Chomi, you have so many spinners. I said, I need kosher LePesach spinners. So we got her kosher LePesach spinners. And then she wanted a white one for
Shabbos.
and a gold one for Chasanas, and we went to buy every color in the whole store. And she has her collection of spinners, and one day she spinned and spinned and spinned and spinned. One time too many, and she got
A huge boo-boo.
a huge cut in her finger. And of course, I'm a drama queen mama, and we celebrate boo-boos and birthdays. And I said, Oy vay Chomi, what happened? And she said, and she was critical, unstable. And then, as the more attention I gave her, the more unstable she became and partially paralyzed. And she couldn't move anymore. And I said, Mommy, we'll take care of you, boo-boo. And I put on cream and I put on a Band-Aid.
My head was shaking over.
She couldn't move for a very long time. But you know what? After a few minutes, Chomi took her hands and she walked into the kitchen and she said, Mommy, I would like to show you something. She picks up this hand and she goes,
1, 2, 3, 4,
5. And she picked up her other hand and she went,
6, 7, 8, 9.
she says, Mommy, look, I have 9 good fingers. Only one boo-boo. Big deal. And you know what I learned from her? We have 9 good fingers. We have so much blessing, so much chesed and rachmim that Hashem gives us. So many good things to thank Hashem for. We have one boo-boo. Big deal. Don't let that one boo-boo take away from the 9 good fingers, from all the good and all the blessing. I'm so grateful to Mrs. Steinmetz for inviting me here to hear all the beautiful things and the Ani Maman that keeps us going. And sometimes we get stuck, like when I use, this is my everything, my guide. And sometimes we say Ani Maman, and we stress on the and we forget the L'chal Abriyam. So when that person comes into your life and takes your kishkes out and makes things hard, or does things to upset you or ruin you or make your life a little harder or any, remember, Hi boire imanik lechal habriyim. This too is part of the plan. Thank you.